I just signed the papers, held the cold keys in my hand, and for the first time in my life, I did not have to watch my back. I bought this beach house to escape the soul-crushing habit of people-pleasing, choosing a community where the rules are as rigid as iron. But then my phone vibrated. It was my sister. 2 hours. She said, 12 friends, 1 month. I replied with a single word. Sure, she thinks she won, but she just walked right into my trap. My name is Ainsley Carter, and until 48 hours ago, my entire existence could be summarized as a series of apologies for things I did not do. I was the family shock absorber, the one who smoothed over the cracks, the one who stayed quiet so everyone else could be loud. But as I turned the ignition off and sat in the silence of my new driveway, I felt a strange, foreign sensation settling in my chest. It was not excitement. It was not joy. It was the cold, heavy weight of boundaries. I had just signed the final papers for the beach house in Driftwood Key. It was a staggering amount of money, a sum that represented 10 years of bonuses, skipped vacations, and aggressive saving. But I had not bought a view. I had not bought access to the ocean. I had bought a fortress. Driftwood Key was not the kind of beach town where people came to party. It was the kind of town where people came to follow rules. I had specifically chosen the Seagrass Palms community because it had the most draconian homeowners association on the eastern seaboard. The rule book was 3 inches thick. They had regulations regarding the specific shade of beige you could paint your mailbox. They had fines for leaving your garage door open for more than 20 minutes. They had a zero-tolerance policy for noise after 9 at night. To most people, Seagrass Palms sounded like a suffocating nightmare of suburban bureaucracy. To me, it looked like armor. I needed a place where no was not a personal opinion, but a legal requirement. I stepped out of the car. The air smelled of salt and manicured grass. The silence here was aggressive. It was perfect. I walked up the path to the front door, the key biting into my palm. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. The house was empty. The staging furniture had been removed, leaving behind wide, open spaces of hardwood floor that gleamed in the afternoon sun. I walked to the center of the living room and just stood there. There was no furniture to arrange, no clutter to manage, and most importantly, no voices. For the first time in my life, I was standing in a space where no one had the right to demand anything from me. And then, my phone vibrated. It was not a ring. I kept my phone on silent, a habit born from years of dreading the inevitable crisis calls from my mother or the manic demands from my sister. But even the vibration against the granite countertop sounded violent in the empty house. I looked down. The name on the screen made my stomach clench by reflex. Whitney, my younger sister, the golden child, the aspiring influencer who viewed her life, and everyone in it, as content to be monetized. I stared at the screen. The old Ainsley would have picked up on the first ring, breathless, apologizing for making her wait. The old Ainsley would have been terrified of the conflict that ignoring the call would spawn. But I was standing in a house with a deed that had only my name on it. I let it vibrate. Once, twice, 3 times. I wanted to see if the world would end if I made her wait 10 seconds. The world did not end. I picked up the phone and swiped the green button. I did not say hello. I just held the phone to my ear. Ainsley, finally. Whitney's voice was loud, pitched up an octave, the tone she used when she was performing for an audience. Even if that audience was just me, she did not ask how I was. She did not ask if the closing had gone well. She did not ask if I was tired after the 6-hour drive. Okay, listen, change of plans. We are on the I-95. We will be there in about 2 hours. I blinked, staring at the dust motes dancing in the shaft of sunlight. Who is we? I asked. My voice sounded calm, which was a miracle. Me and the crew, she chirped, and some friends from the city, about 12 of us, maybe 13 if Jason brings his girlfriend. But she is annoying, so hopefully not. Anyway, we need you to get the place ready. We are going to be starving when we get there. We need charcuterie. Lots of vodka. The good kind, not the cheap stuff you buy. And make sure the beds are made. Oh, and Ainsley? She paused, not for an answer, but for dramatic effect. I am taking the master suite, she announced. The one with the balcony facing the ocean. I saw it on the listing photos. It is perfect for my morning vlog. You can take the guest room downstairs. Actually, no. Give the guest rooms to the guys. You can sleep on the sofa, right? It is just family. You do not mind. She did not ask. She stated it. She was assigning me a role in my own home. I was not the owner. I was the staff. I was the background character who slept on the couch, while the main character took the view. We are going to stay for a month, she added, breezing past the logistics. I need a change of scenery. My engagement numbers are down. And everyone loves a summer at the beach house arc. It is going to be such a vibe. My hand tightened around the phone. The familiar heat rose up the back of my neck, the mixture of rage and humiliation that I had swallowed for decades. She invited 12 strangers to my house. She demanded I cater for them. She relegated me to the sofa. And she did it all with the casual confidence of someone who has never been told no in her entire life. In the past, I would have stuttered. I would have tried to reason with her. I would have said, Whitney, I just bought the place. I have no furniture. Please don't come. And she would have steamrolled me. She would have cried. She would have called our mother, Maris, who would have called me 5 minutes later to scream about how selfish I was for not supporting my sister's career. They would have worn me down until I was apologizing for existing. I looked around my empty living room. I looked at the pristine white walls. If I fought her now, on the phone, she would feed on it. She loved the drama. It gave her leverage. My eyes drifted to the kitchen island. There, sitting exactly where I had left it, was the welcome binder from the Seagrass Palms Homeowners Association. I remembered the email I had received from the property manager, a woman named Janelle Grady, earlier that morning. Strict enforcement. She had written, "We take our occupancy limits and noise ordinances very seriously. I thought about the rules. Maximum occupancy for short-term guests, 6 people. Commercial filming on residential property. Strictly prohibited without a permit. Unregistered guests staying longer than 48 hours. Considered trespassing." Whitney was bringing 12 people. She was coming to film content. She had not asked for permission. A cold, sharp clarity washed over me. It was a sensation I had never felt before. It was the feeling of a trap springing shut. But for the first time, my leg was not the one inside it. If I told her no, she would come anyway, just to spite me. She would arrive and cause a scene on the front lawn, and I would look like the hysterical sister. But if I said yes, if I let her walk into the lion's den that she didn't even know existed? "Ainsley? Are you there? The signal is terrible," Whitney snapped. "Did you hear me? 2 hours. Master suite? Vodka?" I took a deep breath. I let the anger drain out of me, replaced by a icy, calculated calm. "Sure," I said. The word hung in the air. It was flat. It was simple. It was the most dangerous word I had ever spoken. "Great," Whitney said, sounding bored now that she had gotten what she wanted. "Send me the gate code. And seriously, get the good vodka. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. I will text you the details," I said. "Okay. Bye." Click. She hung up. She thought she had won. She thought I was scrambling to the grocery store right now, panic buying expensive liquor and fluffing pillows for her entourage. She thought she was coming to a free vacation home where she could trample all over my boundaries and call it sisterhood. I lowered the phone and looked at the black screen. A text message popped up immediately. It was from Whitney. "BTW. We are filming the arrival for the vlog, so try to look presentable when you open the door. Don't wear those gray sweatpants you always wear. And smile. We are bringing professional cameras. Don't make us lose face." I stared at the message. She was putting it in writing. She was admitting to commercial intent. She was admitting to the size of the group. I did not reply. Instead, I pressed the side buttons on my phone and took a screenshot. I opened my photo gallery. I selected the screenshot. I tapped Add to Album. I created a new album. I typed the names slowly, savoring every letter. Driftwood. Evidence. I walked over to the kitchen island and opened the HOA binder. I ran my finger down the table of contents until I found the section titled Guest Policies and Code of Conduct. I began to read. I read about the fines. I read about the towing policies. I read about the immediate eviction protocols for noise violations. I was not going to run to the store. I was not going to buy vodka. I was not going to make up the master bed. I was going to wait. Whitney said she wanted a vibe. She wanted a reality show. Well, she was about to get one, but it wasn't going to be the summer beach party she was envisioning. It was going to be a legal procedural. I walked to the sliding glass doors that looked out over the deck. Beyond the dunes, the ocean was churning, gray and powerful. The waves crashed against the shore with a rhythmic, destructive force. I placed my hand on the cool glass. For 32 years, I had built my life on the shifting sands of my family's approval. I had let them erode me. I had let them wash away my edges until I was smooth and small and easy to carry. Not anymore. I looked at the reflection of my own face in the glass. I didn't look terrified. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like someone who had finally checked the weather report and boarded up the windows. I was not bracing for impact. I was not cowering. I was building a wall, and for the first time in history, Whitney was going to pay for it. 2 hours, I whispered to the empty room. I turned away from the window and looked at the digital clock on the oven. It was time to get to work, but not the kind of work Whitney expected. I had calls to make. I had codes to change. I had a stage to set. I sat down at the empty kitchen counter, opened the binder to page 12, and dialed the number for the community security office. Peace isn't a place you go to. I realized as the phone began to ring. Peace is a boundary you defend, and the war was about to begin. The binder lay open on the granite island like a divine scripture of restriction. It was 3 inches thick, bound in navy blue vinyl, with the gold crest of the Seagrass Palms Community Association embossed on the front. To most new homeowners, this document was a nuisance, a bureaucratic hurdle filled with petty tyrannies about lawn ornaments and trash can placement. To me, in this specific moment, it was a weapon. I did not pace. I did not hyperventilate. I pulled a bar stool up to the counter and began to read, my finger tracing the lines of text with the precision of a forensic accountant. I needed to know exactly where the line was drawn so I could watch my sister cross it. I skipped the sections on architectural guidelines and went straight to Article 5. Use restrictions. Section 5.3. Occupancy limits. The text was clear, written in unyielding Times New Roman. Single-family residences within the Seagrass Palms community are strictly limited to a maximum occupancy of 2 persons per bedroom, plus 2 additional persons per household, for any period exceeding 12 hours. At no time shall the total number of overnight occupants exceed 10. Regardless of square footage, my house had 2 bedrooms and a den. By the strictest interpretation of the association's math, the legal limit was 6 people. Whitney was bringing 12. She had stated it proudly, like a conqueror announcing the size of her army. 12 people, plus herself, 13 bodies. That was more than double the allowable limit. I continued reading, my eyes scanning for the next violation. Section 6.8. Parking regulations. Street parking is prohibited between the hours of midnight and 6 in the morning. All vehicles must be parked within the driveway or garage. Maximum vehicle allowance per lot is 3. Whitney mentioned a convoy, an SUV, a van for equipment, her car, maybe Jason's car. 4 vehicles minimum, likely 5. They would spill out onto the street. They would block the manicured verges of the neighbors. And then, I found the paragraph that felt like it had been written specifically for the Carter family. Section 9.2. Commercial activity and nuisance. No lot shall be used for any business. Commercial, manufacturing, or mercantile purpose. This includes, but is not limited to, professional photography or videography shoots that disrupt the quiet enjoyment of the neighborhood. Unpermitted commercial filming will result in an immediate cease and desist order and a fine of $500 per incident. I looked at the screenshot in my phone. We are filming the arrival for the vlog. We are bringing professional cameras. She was not just coming to visit. She was bringing a film set into a private residential zone. She was monetizing my sanctuary. I closed the binder. The snap of the rings was satisfyingly loud in the empty kitchen. I had what I needed. I did not need to appeal to Whitney's non-existent sense of decency. I did not need to beg my mother to intervene. I simply needed to trigger the mechanism that was already in place. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the Community Association Management Office. It was a Saturday, but the welcome packet boasted of 24-hour resident support. The phone rang twice before a woman picked up. Seagrass Palms Management. This is Janelle. How can I assist you? Her voice was crisp, efficient, and completely devoid of warmth. It was perfect. Janelle Grady was not a therapist. She was an enforcer. Hello, Janelle, I said, matching her tone. This is Ainsley Carter. I am the new owner of the property at 42 Dune Grass Way. I just closed on the house this morning. Welcome to the community, Ms. Carter, she said. She sounded like she was typing. I have your file right here. Congratulations. Is there an issue with your access fobs? No, I said. I am calling to preempt a security breach. The typing stopped. Go on. I have received notification that a group of approximately 12 to 13 individuals is attempting to access my property in under 2 hours, I said. My voice remained steady. I was reporting a crime, not complaining about a sibling. They intend to stay for 30 days. They are bringing commercial filming equipment. I have not authorized this visit. I have not invited them, and I am strictly enforcing the occupancy limits as stated in Section 5.3 of the bylaws. There was a short silence on the other end. I could practically hear Janelle shifting gears from customer service to perimeter defense. Are these individuals known to you? She asked. One is a family member, I said. The rest are strangers. I see, Janelle said. Her tone did not change. She did not ask about family dynamics. She did not ask why I couldn't just tell them to leave. She only cared about the code. Ms. Carter, we have 2 levels of enforcement. We can issue a warning at the gate and allow them entry as guests, provided they register, or we can deny entry entirely to anyone not listed on your permanent access list. Which level of enforcement are you requesting? Deny entry, I said. Total restriction. Understood, Janelle said. I need you to send me an email right now confirming this instruction. Attach a photo of your government identification and the first page of your closing statement to verify you are the sole owner. State clearly that you do not authorize access for a Ms. Whitney Carter, I supplied. Whitney Carter and any associated party, Janelle finished. Once I have that email, I will flag the address in our gate system. If they try to bypass the main gate and come through the service entrance, the scanners will red flag their license plates. I am sending it now, I said. I switched the phone to speaker and opened my email app. I had the documents saved as PDFs from the closing. I drafted the email while Janelle waited on the line. Subject: Access Denial Directive. 42. Dune Grass Way. To whom it may concern. I, Ainsley Carter, sole owner of the property located at 42 Dune Grass Way, hereby formally state that I have not granted permission for Whitney Carter or any accompanying group to enter, occupy, or utilize my property. Any attempt by these individuals to enter the premises should be treated as unauthorized trespassing. I request full enforcement of association bylaws regarding occupancy limits and commercial filming prohibitions. I attached the deed. I attached a photo of the front of the house. I attached the screenshot of Whitney's text message admitting to the large group and the cameras. I hit send. Sent, I told Janelle. Received, she replied instantly. I am updating the security log now. Dante is the officer on patrol today. I will radio him to keep an eye on your street. Thank you, Janelle, I said. Then, a moment of hesitation broke through my procedural armor. They are going to be aggressive. My sister. She does not take no for an answer. She will try to argue with the guards. Janelle let out a small, dry sound that might have been a laugh. Ms. Carter, our guards are retired state troopers. They do not argue, they trespass. Let us be the bad guys. That is what you pay your association fees for. You stay inside. Let the gate do its job. Understood, I said. Don't engage, Janelle added, a final piece of advice that felt more valuable than the house itself. If they manage to get to your driveway, do not go outside, do not open the door, let Dante handle the boundary. We disconnected. I put the phone down. A strange sensation washed over me. It was lighter than relief. It was the feeling of outsourcing my trauma response. For 30 years, I had been the police, the judge, and the warden of my own boundaries, and I had been terrible at all 3 jobs because I was too close to the inmate. Now, I had hired a mercenary, but the digital wall was only the first layer of defense. I needed to secure the physical perimeter. I walked to the smart home panel mounted in the hallway. It was a sleek, glass rectangle that controlled the heartbeat of the house. I tapped the screen to wake it up. System status, disarmed. Front door, locked. Garage, closed. I went into the user settings. The previous owner had left a generic code. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was laughable. I deleted it. I navigated to the Master Access tab. I entered a new 6-digit code, a random string of numbers that had no connection to my birthday, my anniversary, or any date Whitney could guess. I confirmed it. Then I went to the Guest Access tab. There were no active codes. Good. I created a new, temporary code labeled Security. I set it to expire in 24 hours. This was for Dante or the police, should they need to enter. Next, I opened the camera settings. The house was equipped with a video doorbell and a floodlight camera above the garage. I tapped the record settings. Motion sensitivity, high, clip length, 120 seconds, audio recording, on. Whitney lived her life in the editing room. She could take a 2-hour screaming match and cut it down to a 15-second clip where she looked like a victim and I looked like a monster. She controlled the narrative because she controlled the footage. Not today. I navigated to the storage options. Cloud backup, enabled. Timestamp, overlay, on. I wanted every second stamped with the date and time, accurate to the millisecond. If she tried to claim I attacked her, I would have the footage showing I was standing 5 feet away. If she claimed she arrived at 4 o'clock when she really arrived at 6, the timestamp would call her a liar. I was not just setting up security, I was setting up a deposition. I checked the garage door settings. Lock mode. Activated. This meant the garage could not be opened by a remote clicker or the keypad on the frame. It could only be opened from the app inside the house. I checked the side gate. Smart latch. Engaged. I stood back and watched the screen. Green icons turned to red padlocks, one by one. The access points to my life were sealing shut. I was not done. I went to the small home office nook off the kitchen. There was a printer there, left by the staging company or perhaps the previous owner. I had tested it earlier. It had paper and ink. I pulled up the PDF of the community rules and regulations on my phone and sent it to the printer. The machine whirred to life, a rhythmic chug 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 that sounded like industry. I printed 3 copies of the page containing Article 5 and Article 9. I took a yellow highlighter from my bag. I sat at the island and uncapped the marker. The smell of the ink was sharp and chemical. I drew a thick neon line through Section 5.3, maximum occupancy of 10. I drew a second line through Section 9.2, unpermitted commercial filming. Then I printed a separate document, one I had typed up myself on my phone notes app just moments before. It was not a legal document, but it looked like one. Notice of non-permission. 2. Whitney Carter and Associates. From Ainsley Carter. Property owner. Date. January 28, 2026. Status. Access. Denied. You are not authorized to be on this property. You are not authorized to store equipment on this property. You are not authorized to film on this property. Please remove yourself and your vehicles immediately. Failure to comply will result in a request for law enforcement assistance. I placed the papers on the kitchen counter. Arranged in a neat fan, the highlighted rules, the notice, the binder, it was a display. It was a statement. If she managed to bypass the gate, if she managed to scream loud enough that I had to open the door just to hand her a piece of paper, this would be what she saw. Not a sister with tears in her eyes, holding a tray of appetizers, but a counter that looked like the reception desk of a law firm. I walked back to the living room. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the floor, through the glass. I could see the sea oats swaying violently in the wind. The ocean was rough today, the whitecaps visible even from here. It was a chaotic, untamed force, crashing against the land, trying to eat away at the coastline. But here, inside, the air was still. It was cool, regulated by the thermostat to a precise 72 degrees. The silence was absolute. I had spent my life bracing for the waves. I had spent my life letting the water rush in, apologizing for getting wet, and trying to bail out the boat while my family drilled holes in the hull. I looked at the smart panel one last time. Every light was green. Every lock was engaged. The email to Janelle was in the server. The camera was watching the driveway with its unblinking electric eye. I was not just a woman standing in a beach house. I was the architect of my own peace. I checked the time. 1 hour and 45 minutes had passed since the call. They would be here in 15 minutes. I went to the refrigerator and took out a bottle of sparkling water. I poured it into a glass. I did not buy vodka. I did not buy charcuterie. I did not scramble. I took a sip of the cold water and waited. Outside, the Atlantic Ocean roared against the shore. Inside, I stood behind a seawall made of paper, bylaws, and 6-digit codes. And for the first time, I knew the wall would hold. The silence of the afternoon was not broken. It was shattered. Exactly 2 hours after the phone call, the first engine growled at the top of the street. I was standing in the living room, concealed behind the sheer white curtains of the bay window. I had not moved for the last 40 minutes. My breathing was shallow, controlled, like a sniper waiting for a target to cross the crosshairs. It looked less like a family visit and more like a military occupation. First came a white convertible, pristine and aggressive, driving slowly down the center of the road. Whitney was driving, one hand on the wheel, the other adjusting her oversized sunglasses. Behind her was a black SUV, likely a rental, packed with heads bobbing to invisible music, and bringing up the rear was a gray cargo van. I watched as they pulled up to the curb. They did not park parallel to the sidewalk. They pulled in at jaunty angles, wheels mounting the perfect emerald grass of the verge. One tire of the SUV crushed a small bed of marigolds near the mailbox. My chest tightened. A phantom reflex of the old Ainsley, who would have run out the door apologizing for the grass before they even turned off the engines. But the new Ainsley, the Ainsley who owned the deed, just watched. I noted the license plates. I noted the tire tracks. I noted the time, 4:13 in the afternoon. The doors opened, and the noise began. It was a cacophony of high-pitched greetings, slamming metal, and the chaotic energy of people who believe the world is their stage. Whitney stepped out of the convertible. She spun around, arms wide, as if embracing an invisible audience. She was wearing a white linen sundress that billowed perfectly in the wind, an outfit chosen specifically for the beach house arrival aesthetic. Then the cargo van opened. This was not luggage. 2 young men in black t-shirts jumped out and began unloading equipment. Large, heavy tripods, silver reflector discs, a Pelican case that I knew contained her high-end drone, a slider rail for cinematic tracking shots, and finally, 2 massive ring lights on stands. They were not unpacking for a vacation. They were load-in for a production. They were treating my private residence like a rented studio lot. I watched Whitney point at the house. She was directing them. She gestured to the front porch, then to the balcony of the master suite, my bedroom. She mimed a framing box with her fingers. She was already editing the footage in her head. "Okay, guys." Her voice drifted through the glass, muffled but distinct. "Get the B-roll of the exterior before we lose the golden hour light. I want the drone up in 5 minutes. Capturing the ocean reveal is priority 1. A girl with pink hair dragged a suitcase across the pavers of the driveway, the wheels clacking loudly. Whit, where do we put the wardrobe rack? Just leave it in the foyer for now, Whitney shouted back. We will set up the fitting room in the den. The fitting room. In my den. I felt a coldness spread through my veins that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. They had not even knocked on the door yet. They assumed access was a guarantee. They assumed my life was simply available square footage for their content. I did not go to the door. I did not unlock the deadbolt. I stood perfectly still, my arms hanging loose at my sides. I refused to give her the scene she wanted. There would be no frantic sister running out to hug them. There would be no flustered hostess trying to carry bags. There would be only silence. And then, a second procession arrived. It was silent, efficient, and infinitely more intimidating than Whitney's circus. A white patrol car with the green and gold stripe of the seagrass palms. Security rolled silently up the street. It stopped directly behind Whitney's convertible, blocking it in. Simultaneously, a second sedan, marked Town of Driftwood Key, Code Enforcement, pulled up behind the cargo van. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Janelle had not lied. The driver's door of the security car opened. Dante Morrow stepped out. He was a tall man with the posture of a retired Marine and a uniform that was pressed to a razor's edge. He adjusted his belt, looked at the tire marks on the grass, and walked up the driveway with a clipboard in his hand. The code enforcement officer, a shorter man with a grim expression and a tablet, joined him. The activity in the driveway froze. The boys carrying the slider rail stopped. The girl with the pink hair looked nervously at the police-style cruiser. Whitney, however, did not freeze. She pivoted. She saw the uniforms and immediately switched on her camera-ready smile. To her, this was just an interaction with fans, or perhaps a minor misunderstanding that her charisma could solve. "Hello, officers," she chirped, waving a hand adorned with silver rings. "Are we blocking the road? So sorry. We are just unloading. We will move the cars into the garage in a sec." Dante did not smile. He stopped 6 feet away from her. He did not look at the camera that one of Whitney's friends had instinctively pointed at him. "Ma'am," Dante said. His voice was deep, flat, and carried the weight of absolute authority. "I need you to halt all activity immediately." Whitney laughed. It was a bright, tinkling sound, fake as a cubic zirconia. "Oh, it is fine. I am Whitney Carter. My sister owns this house. We are just visiting for the month. Family reunion, you know?" She gestured to the group as if they were a wholesome gathering, ignoring the professional lighting rigs standing on the lawn. "Family or not," Dante said, looking down at his clipboard. "I have a specific directive regarding this address. This is a private community with strict access controls." He pulled a paper from the clipboard. It was red. "This is a notice of violation for unauthorized parking on community landscaping," he said, handing it to her. Whitney took it automatically, her smile faltering for a microsecond. "And this," Dante continued, handing her a second document, "is a directive of no trespass." The silence that fell over the driveway was absolute. Even the ocean seemed to hush. Whitney looked at the paper, then she looked at the camera lens. Realizing this was being recorded, she forced a laugh, louder this time, bordering on shrill. "Trespass? That is ridiculous. I told you my sister lives here. Ainsley, come out here and tell this guy who I am." She turned to the house, screaming my name. "Ainsley, stop playing around. It is not funny." I watched her face contort. She was confused. In her script, I was the doormat. The doormat does not call security. The doormat does not lock the door. Dante stepped sideways, blocking her path to the front porch. "Ma'am, do not approach the residence." "Excuse me?" Whitney snapped, her nice girl mask slipping. "This is my family's house. I have rights." "Do you have written authorization from the property owner to be here?" Dante asked. It was a simple question. It hung in the hot afternoon air like a guillotine blade. Whitney froze. Just for a heartbeat. Her eyes darted to the window where I was standing. Though she could not see me, she licked her lips. We talked on the phone, she stammered. She said sure, she knows we are coming. Verbal consent is difficult to verify, Dante said calmly. However, I have a signed affidavit from Ms. Ainsley Carter, dated today at 2:15 in the afternoon, explicitly denying entry to a Ms. Whitney Carter and any associated party. The friends behind Whitney began to shift. The girl with pink hair took a step back toward the car. The guy holding the camera lowered it slightly. They were realizing this wasn't a quirky vlog moment. This was a legal situation. That is a lie, Whitney hissed. She is just being dramatic. She is having an episode. Ainsley, open this damn door. She tried to push past Dante. He didn't touch her, but he stepped into her space with such immovable presence that she bounced back. Code enforcement, the second officer spoke up. His voice was scratchy and dry. I am observing commercial filming equipment. Do you have a permit from the town to operate a production set in a residential zone? It is not a production, Whitney screamed. It is a vlog. It is personal use. 12 people, professional lighting, a drone, the officer listed, tapping his tablet. That is a commercial production. Without a permit, that is a $5,000 fine per day, and I am issuing the first citation right now. Whitney looked trapped. Her face flushed a deep, blotchy red. She looked at her friends, who were now actively retreating. She needed a villain. She needed to turn this around. Ainsley, she shrieked, her voice cracking. I know you are in there. How can you do this to me? In front of my team. We are family. It was time. I moved from the window. I walked to the front door. I unlocked the deadbolt. The sound of the lock disengaging was loud enough to be heard outside. Whitney's face lit up with triumph. She thought I had broken. She thought the pressure had worked. See? She said to Dante. I told you. She's coming out. I opened the door, but I did not swing it wide. I opened it exactly 6 inches, the length of the security chain I had engaged before unlocking the bolt. I stood in the gap. I was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt. My face was bare. I looked at Dante. I looked at the code enforcement officer. And finally, I looked at Whitney. Ainsley, she breathed, putting on her best, hurt sister face. Tell them to back off. This is humiliating. I looked her in the eye. I did not blink. I did not invite you, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the stunned silence of the driveway, it carried like a bell. Whitney flinched as if I had slapped her. What? I do not consent to you being here, I continued, reciting the words I had practiced in my head. I do not consent to your friends entering my home. I do not consent to you filming on my property. Ainsley, stop it, she laughed nervously, looking at her friends. She is joking. She has this dry sense of humor. Officer, I said, shifting my gaze to Dante, please remove these people from my property. You can't do that, Whitney screamed, the mask shattering completely. She lunged toward the door, but Dante caught her arm. You can't kick me out. This is Mom's house, too. It is family property. She scrambled to unzip her designer handbag. Her hands were shaking. She pulled out a folded, crumpled piece of paper. I have proof, she yelled, waving the paper in the air. I have papers. Mom signed it. It says, I have rights to use the property for business development. It is in the trust. She thrust the paper toward the code enforcement officer, thinking it was her ace in the hole, thinking it proved she had a right to be there. Read it, she demanded. It proves this is a family asset. The officer took the paper. He adjusted his glasses. He looked at the document. Then he looked closer. He frowned. He looked up at Whitney, and his expression was not one of apology. It was one of confusion mixed with professional disdain. Ma'am, the officer said slowly, this isn't a property deed, and it is not a trust document. It says Carter family right at the top, Whitney insisted. Yes, the officer said. He turned the paper so the camera, and I, could see the header. But the title of this form is Application for Commercial Filming Permit, Town of Driftwood Key. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a car. You didn't fill out the owner section, the officer pointed out, tapping a blank line. But you signed the applicant section, and you listed the property usage as, he squinted, permanent studio location. I stared at the paper. She hadn't just come to crash on my couch. She hadn't just come to shoot a few videos. She had come to designate my home as her place of business. She intended to register my address as her commercial headquarters. The look on the faces of her friends was pure horror. They weren't just trespassing on a sister's house. They were accomplices to a fraudulent permit application. Whitney stammered. I was going to file it later. Mom said, So you admit you do not have a permit right now? The officer asked, pulling a ticket book from his belt. And you admit you do not have the owner's signature? Dante added. Stepping closer, Whitney looked at me through the 6-inch gap in the door. Her eyes were wide, panicked, pleading. She wanted me to save her. She wanted me to step out, pay the fine, sign the paper, and fix the mess she had made. I looked at her. I looked at the paper that proved she saw me not as a sister, but as a landlord she could bypass. Goodbye, Whitney, I said, and I closed the door. I slid the deadbolt back into place. Click. I walked back to the window. Outside, the scene had dissolved into chaos. The officer was writing a citation. Dante was pointing toward the main road. The friends were throwing the equipment back into the van with frantic haste, desperate to distance themselves from the disaster. Whitney was standing alone in the middle of the driveway, holding her useless piece of paper, screaming at a closed door that finally, had no handle on the outside. The blue and red lights of the Driftwood Key police cruiser did not look festive against the twilight. They looked surgical. They cut through the gathering dusk, illuminating the panic that had finally settled over my driveway. Whitney had not left when I closed the door. She had pounded on the wood. She had screamed that I was a thief, that I was stealing our mother's hard work, that I was ungrateful. But the moment the second patrol car arrived, actual law enforcement, not just private security, the volume of her outrage dropped to a sullen, terrified hiss. I watched from the darkened window of the den. The code enforcement officer was speaking to a police sergeant. They were looking at the crumpled paper Whitney had tried to pass off as authorization. The sergeant took the paper, folded it, and placed it into an evidence bag. It was no longer a prop in Whitney's drama. It was now state's evidence of intent to defraud a municipality. That was the breaking point for her entourage. The loyalty of a social media hanger-on is measured in Wi-Fi signal strength and proximity to clout. Right now, Whitney had neither. The guy with the camera, the one who had been so eager to film my humiliation, started walking backward toward the rental van. He didn't look at Whitney. He looked at the ground. We are going to head back to the city, I heard the girl with pink hair say. Her voice was thin, carrying through the glass. This is a lot. Whit, we can't get arrested. You are leaving? Whitney sounded incredulous. You are just going to leave me here? We have the equipment in the van, the girl said, already opening the passenger door. We can't have the gear impounded. One by one, they deserted her. The SUV reversed out of the flower bed, leaving deep, muddy ruts in the pristine soil. The van followed, as the camera guy climbed in. He looked up at the house. He couldn't see me behind the blinds, but he nodded. It was a small, shameful apology. He knew. They all knew. This wasn't a family dispute. This was a crime scene in the making. Whitney stood alone next to her white convertible. The police sergeant said something to her, pointing emphatically toward the main gate. She got into her car. She slammed the door so hard the chassis shook. She didn't look at the house again. She peeled out, her tires screeching on the asphalt. Following the convoy of former friends out of the community, silence returned to Dune Grass Way, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the heavy, charged silence of a battlefield after the cannons stopped firing. I did not sleep well that night. I sat in the living room with a single lamp on, listening to the wind rattle the storm shutters. I kept checking my phone, expecting an apology, a plea, something human. Instead, at 11:45 at night, a single text message arrived. "You think you won? You are so stupid. You should check what Mom filed. Enjoy the house while you can." The message sat on my screen, glowing in the dark. Check what Mom filed. It wasn't the angry rant of a defeated sister. It was a taunt. It was the confidence of someone who knows a secret trapdoor exists in the room you think you have locked. I didn't reply. I didn't sleep. I spent the next 8 hours staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every legal document I had signed. The deed was in my name. The mortgage was in my name. The title insurance was clear. What could she have filed? The moment the sun cracked the horizon, bleeding gray light into the sky, I was dressed. I drank black coffee that tasted like acid. I grabbed my car keys and my folder of closing documents. The county recorder's office was located in the county seat, a 40-minute drive inland. The building was a brutalist block of concrete that smelled of floor wax and old paper. I arrived 10 minutes before they opened. I stood by the glass doors, watching the civil servants sip their morning coffees, waiting for the clock to strike 8. When the doors unlocked, I was the first person at the counter. The clerk was a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain and a nameplate that read Patricia. She looked like she had seen every variety of property dispute known to man and was unimpressed by all of them. "Help you?" she asked, not looking up from her keyboard. "I need to check the recording status of a property," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were gripping the counter edge so hard my knuckles were white. "I am the owner. I want to see if anything has been filed against the deed in the last 24 hours. "Address?" Patricia asked. 42 Dune Grass Way, Driftwood Key, she typed. Click, clack, click. "Name?" "Ainsley Carter." She hit enter. She squinted at the screen. Then she stopped. It was a small reaction, a hesitation. Her hand hovered over the mouse. She leaned in closer to the monitor. "You said you are Ainsley Carter?" she asked. She looked up at me then. The boredom was gone from her eyes, replaced by a sharp, wary intelligence. "Yes," I said. I slid my driver's license across the counter. "Is there a problem?" Patricia looked at the license. She looked at the screen. She looked back at me. "Ms. Carter," she said slowly, "according to our system, a document was received via e-recording yesterday afternoon at 2:12, 6:32. That was exactly when Whitney was screaming in my driveway. That was exactly when she was waving that fake permit." "What document?" I asked. The air in the room felt suddenly thin. "It is a deed of trust with an assignment of rents," Patricia said, transferring a 50% interest in the property to an entity listed as the Carter Legacy Trust. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. A trust. A family trust I didn't know existed. "I didn't sign that," I said. "I am the sole owner. I just closed on this house 3 days ago. I haven't signed anything since the closing table." Patricia turned the monitor slightly so I could see. "The document was uploaded electronically. It has a digital signature block with your name." I stared at the screen. There it was. A PDF. A standard form. And at the bottom, a scrawl that looked vaguely like my signature, but cleaner, looping in a way I never looped my letters. "Who submitted it?" I demanded. "I need to know who the submitter was." Patricia clicked on the metadata tab. "Electronic submission came from a verified user account. The account holder is listed as..." She adjusted her glasses. "Maris Carter, my mother." The puzzle pieces slammed together with a violence that made me nauseous. Whitney wasn't just stalling for time in the driveway. She was the distraction. While she was screaming at the front door, keeping me occupied, keeping the security guards busy, my mother was sitting at a computer somewhere, uploading a forged deed to the county database. "It is a forgery," I said. "My mother submitted it. I did not authorize this." Patricia nodded. She didn't look surprised. In her line of work, family fraud was probably as common as rain. "If you are contesting the validity of the signature, we have a protocol," she said. She reached under the counter and pulled out a form printed on bright orange paper. "This is a property fraud alert and an affidavit of false filing. We can't remove the document. Only a judge can do that. But we can flag the parcel." "Flag it," I said. "Flag it right now." "I am placing a code-red administrative lock on the parcel number," Patricia said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "This means any future filings, liens, sales, transfers will require manual verification and in-person identification. It stops the bleeding." "I need a copy," I said. "I need a certified copy of what she filed, and I need the metadata, the IP address, the timestamp, the submitter ID." "I can give you the certified copy of the instrument," Patricia said. "The metadata log is part of the public record for e-recordings, so I can print that too. It will cost you $2 per page." "I don't care about the cost," I said. While the printer churned, I stood there, feeling a coldness that went deeper than bone. It was the coldness of absolute clarity. I studied the timestamps. Closing date, January 28th. Deed recorded, January 29th. 9 a.m. Fraudulent deed uploaded, January 30th. 2:12 p.m. They had waited until the house was legally mine, until my money had transferred to the seller, until the keys were in my hand. Then they struck. Patricia handed me the stack of warm paper. I looked at the deed of trust. It was a crude forgery. They had likely photocopied my signature from an old birthday card or a college loan document and pasted it onto the digital file. But to a clerk glancing at a screen, it looked real enough to record. "Thank you," I said to Patricia. "Ms. Carter," she said as I turned to leave. "You need a lawyer, not a family lawyer, a real estate litigator. This constitutes a cloud on your title. You can't sell, refinance, or clear this up without a court order." "I know," I said. I walked out of the building into the harsh morning light. I sat in my car and spread the papers out on the passenger seat. I looked at the timeline I was building. 4:13 p.m. Whitney arrives. 4:20 p.m. Security confronts her. 4:30 p.m. Whitney creates a scene, demanding I come out. 6:32 p.m. Maris uploads the fake deed. 11:45 p.m. Whitney texts me to check the files. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't about a vacation. I realized then why Whitney had brought the cameras. Why she had 12 people. Why she had insisted on the arrival shot. She wasn't there to film a summer at the beach vlog. She was there to film an ambush. The script was simple. They invade the house. I try to kick them out. Whitney produces the paperwork showing the trust owns half the house. She films my confusion. She films me losing control. She films the police looking at the paperwork and saying, "Well, it is a civil matter if you both own it," and then she posts it. Title: Evicting My Own Sister? She tried to steal our family home. She wanted to monetize my destruction. She wanted to frame me as the villain who tried to lock her family out of their own property, while she, the hero, reclaimed it with legal proof. They didn't just want the house. They wanted to destroy my reputation, my sanity, and my legal standing, all for the sake of a viral moment and a free beach house. I looked at the orange fraud alert form in my hand. My hand wasn't shaking anymore. "Okay, Mom," I said to the empty car. "You want to play with paperwork? Let's play." I started the engine. I wasn't going back to the beach house to hide. I was going to find the nastiest, coldest, most shark-like real estate attorney in the state of Florida. Whitney came for a reality show. I was about to give her a true crime documentary. I did not call a therapist. I did not call a crying shoulder. I called the number on the bottom of my closing statement listed under title insurance. The voice on the other end was confused at first. Accustomed to congratulations, not crisis management, I cut through the pleasantries with a single sentence. There is a cloud on my title, and I need a referral for a litigator who specializes in fraud, not a mediator, a shark. An hour later, I was sitting in the office of Maya Keene. Maya did not work in a glass tower downtown with a view of the harbor. Her office was in a single-story brick building next to a dry cleaner. Squeezed between a bail bondsman and a notary public, the waiting room smelled of stale coffee and printer toner. There were no expensive art pieces on the wall, only framed diplomas and a calendar marked up with court dates in red ink. It was perfect. I did not want someone who charged for ambiance. I wanted someone who charged for blood. Maya walked in. She was a woman in her 50s with short, steel-gray hair and eyes that looked like they had scanned 1,000,000 pages of fine print. She didn't offer me water. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She sat down, put on a pair of reading glasses, and held out her hand for the documents I had brought from the county recorder. I watched her read. She didn't gasp. She didn't frown. She simply turned the pages, her eyes flicking back and forth between the legitimate deed and the fraudulent one my mother had uploaded. After 3 minutes of silence, she dropped the papers onto her desk. "You are Ainsley Carter," she said, pointing to the real deed. Then she pointed to the forgery. "And this is a mess." "It is my mother," I said, "and my sister." "I don't care if it is the Pope," Maya said. Her voice was dry, like sandpaper. "In this room, we don't talk about family. Family is messy. Family implies emotion. We are not going to argue with your mother about why she feels entitled to your house. We are going to argue with the public record." She leaned forward, interlacing her fingers. "Here is the reality," she continued. "Right now, legally speaking, the chain of title is broken. If you tried to sell this house today, you couldn't. If you tried to refinance, you'd be denied. This document, fake as it is, exists in the county database. It effectively freezes your asset." "So how do we unfreeze it?" I asked. Maya pulled a yellow legal pad toward her. She picked up a pen. "We launch a 3-prong attack. We hit them fast, and we hit them on the procedural level." She wrote the number 1. "First," she said, "we file for a temporary restraining order, not just physical. We need a TRO against further filings. We are going to ask a judge to enjoin Maris Carter, Whitney Carter, and any agent acting on their behalf from submitting any documents related to this parcel number. That stops them from muddying the water any further." She wrote the number 2. "Second, we file a quiet title action. This is the main lawsuit. We are asking the court to review the evidence, declare the second deed invalid, and issue a court order directing the county clerk to strike it from the record. This establishes that you, and only you, are the fee simple owner." She wrote the number 3, and she circled it. "Third," she said, looking up at me, "we file a lis pendens." "What is that?" I asked. "Latin for suit pending," Maya said. "It is a giant red warning sign that gets recorded against the property. It puts the entire world on notice that the ownership of this house is in dispute in a court of law. It means if they try to sell their share to a third party or use it as collateral for a loan, no bank will touch them. It locks the property down. It suffocates their ability to profit from the fraud." I nodded. It was clean. It was aggressive. It was exactly what I needed. "Do it," I said. Maya looked at me. "This is going to cost you. My retainer is $5,000. The filing fees are another $500. And if they fight it, which they might, if they are delusional enough, it will go higher." "I have the money," I said. I didn't tell her it was my emergency fund. I didn't tell her I was dipping into the savings I had earmarked for furniture. "I would rather pay you than pay them." "Good answer," Maya said. She ripped the page off the legal pad. "Now, homework, while I am drafting the motions. You need to lock down your digital perimeter. If they were bold enough to forge a deed, they are bold enough to try to access your accounts." She started listing tasks, her voice snapping like a metronome. "Change every password you have, email, banking, utilities. Enable 2-factor authentication on everything. Call the electric company, the water company, the internet provider. Put a verbal password on your accounts so no one can call in pretending to be you and shut off your power." "I already did the locks on the house," I said. Do more, Maya said. Sign up for a credit monitoring service that specializes in title theft. You have the county alert, which is good. But you need redundancy. I nodded. I understood this language. I work for North Shore Riskworks, I said. I am a senior risk analyst. I build models for catastrophic failure. Maya paused. She looked at me with a new flicker of respect. So you know how this works? Yes, I said. If you can measure it, you can control it. Emotional damage is a variable I can't track, but procedural risk? That is my baseline. Excellent, Maya said. Then you will appreciate this next part. We need to preserve the evidence before they try to delete it. She turned to her computer and opened a template document. The electronic recording system your mother used captures metadata. Maya explained. When you upload a file, it stamps the IP address, the device ID, the browser type, and the login credentials. I am sending a litigation hold letter to the third-party vendor that manages the county's e-recording portal. We are demanding they preserve all server logs related to that transaction. Can we prove it was them? I asked. They could claim they were hacked. We can prove it, Maya said. Unless your mother is a master hacker who knows how to spoof an IP address through a VPN in Switzerland, she probably uploaded it from her home Wi-Fi or Whitney's studio. Once we have the IP log, we match it to the location. It is a digital fingerprint. It places them at the scene of the crime. I felt a cold, grim satisfaction. They thought they were being clever with their PDFs and their Carter Legacy Trust, but they were amateurs playing a game against professionals. I have more evidence, I said. I have the text messages. I have the video from the doorbell camera where Whitney admits they are family and claims rights to the house. I have the audio of the code enforcement officer reading the fake permit application. Maya held out her hand. Give it to me. Flash drive? Yes, I said, handing over the small silver drive I had prepared. Everything is organized by date and time. You really are a risk analyst, Maya muttered. Plugging it in. Okay. Step 4. You are going to the police station. I thought this was a civil matter, I said. The ownership dispute is civil, Maya corrected. Forging a signature on a legal document is a felony. Filing a false instrument with a public office is a felony. Identity theft is a felony. You are going to file a police report. They probably won't arrest anyone today. They might tell you to wait for the civil court to rule. But we need the paper trail. We need an official report number to attach to our quiet title complaint. It shows the judge we are serious. I will go straight there, I said. I stood up to leave. Maya was already typing, her fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. But then she stopped. She frowned at the document on her screen, the fraudulent deed she had scanned in. Wait a minute, she said. What? I missed this on the first pass, she said, leaning in. Look at the return address block. I walked around the desk and looked at the screen, the top left corner of the fraudulent deed. Usually, Maya said, when you file a deed, you list the return address as the property address, or the lawyer's office. Look what they put. I squinted. Return to Carter Legacy Trust, P.O., Box 492, Willow Creek, Florida. Willow Creek? I said. That is where my parents live. That is 3 hours away. That is not the problem, Maya said. She clicked open a new browser tab and logged into the county tax collector's portal. She typed in my parcel number. The screen loaded. Maya pointed to a field labeled mailing address for tax bills. It had been changed. Yesterday, it was 42 Dunegrass Way. Today, it was P.O. Box 492, Willow Creek. They didn't just file a deed, Maya said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. They filed a change of address form with the tax collector. They diverted your property tax bills to their box. I felt the blood drain from my face. Why? Because if you don't pay your taxes, the county sells the house, Maya said. And if the bills go to a box you don't check, you don't know you are delinquent until the sheriff shows up to auction it off. Or, she looked at me. Or they pay the taxes, she said. If they pay the taxes for a certain number of years, in some jurisdictions, it strengthens their claim of adverse possession. They were trying to cut you out of the communication loop entirely. They wanted to make you invisible to the state. I gripped the edge of the desk. This was not just greed. This was erasure. They wanted to erase my ownership, erase my name, erase my presence. They wanted to steal the house and make it look like I had simply abandoned it. "Fix it," I said. "I am locking it now." Maya said, "But this is good. I mean, it is terrible for you, but it is great for the lawsuit. This proves malice. This proves it wasn't a clerical error or a misunderstanding. You don't accidentally redirect tax bills to a panneau box 3 hours away. This is calculated fraud." She looked up at me. Her eyes were hard, flinty, and absolutely confident. "Ainsley," she said, "go to the police, get that report number, then go home, lock your doors, and pour yourself a drink. You have hired a mercenary. Let me do my job." "I will," I said. I walked to the door. "One more thing," Maya called out. I turned back. "They think they are smart because they know how to fill out a form," Maya said. She tapped the stack of papers on her desk. "But they forgot the golden rule of bureaucracy. They like paper. Good. Paper leaves fingerprints." I walked out of the office and into the bright, blinding sun. I got into my car and drove toward the police station. My hands were steady on the wheel. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't the sister who cried. I wasn't the daughter who apologized. I was the client, and I had just authorized a war. 2 days later, I was back in Maya Keene's office. The air conditioning was humming a low, steady drone that sounded like a headache waiting to happen. On her desk, there was no paper this time, just her laptop, angled away from me, and a steaming cup of tea that she hadn't touched. "We got a response from the e-recording vendor," Maya said. She didn't look up. She was typing, her eyes darting across lines of code or text that I couldn't see. "They complied with the litigation hold. They preserved the server logs. They won't give us the full packet without a subpoena, which the judge will sign tomorrow. But they gave us the header information to confirm the transaction source." "And?" I asked. My hands were folded in my lap. I was surprised at how steady they were. Maya stopped typing. She took off her reading glasses and looked at me. "Ainsley, when you told me about the deed, I assumed your mother did it. She is the one named as the submitter. She is the beneficiary of the trust. It fits the profile of a matriarch trying to control assets." "It was her," I said. "I saw her name on the recording receipt." "You saw her name on the signature block," Maya corrected. "Anyone can type a name, but the digital fingerprint? That tells a different story." She reached out and swiveled the laptop monitor so it faced me. "Look at the contact email associated with the user account that uploaded the file." I leaned forward. The screen was bright, filled with rows of data. I scanned down to the line Maya was pointing at. User ID, MC_trust_admin, registered email. Operations at whitneymotionhouse.com. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a slow sensation. It was a violent lurch, as if the elevator cable had just snapped. "Whitney," I whispered. "That is a corporate domain," Maya said. "Whitney Motion House. That is your sister's production company, right?" "Yes," I said. "It is her brand. It is her LLC. Now look at the IP address," Maya said, tapping a string of numbers below the email. "We ran a geolocation trace. It doesn't ping to your parents' house in Willow Creek. It pings to a commercial loft in the Arts District downtown. Specifically, the address listed on the Secretary of State website for Whitney Motion House." I stared at the glowing letters. My mother didn't do this. My mother could barely convert a Word document to a PDF. My mother still called the internet the web. "Whitney did it," I said. The realization was cold and absolute. "Whitney created the account. Whitney uploaded the forgery." "It gets worse," Maya said. "Look at the timestamp." I looked. The line read, "Upload complete. January 30th, 1400 hours and 12 minutes, 2:12 in the afternoon." I felt a chill ripple across my skin that had nothing to do with the office temperature. "She called me at 2:13, I said. My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. "She called me 1 minute after the upload finished." I closed my eyes. The conversation played back in my head. "We are coming in 2 hours. Get the vodka. I am taking the master suite." I had thought she was just being impulsive. I had thought she was just being her usual, chaotic, selfish self, deciding on a whim to crash my beach house. "It wasn't a whim," I said, opening my eyes. "It was a coordinated strike." "She hit submit on the forgery," Maya said, her voice flat and clinical. And then she picked up the phone to establish physical possession. She knew the county clerk wouldn't process the filing until later that evening. E-recordings go into a queue. She needed to be inside the house before the record became official, if she was inside, with 12 witnesses and luggage, claiming residency when the deed hit the public record. It would have been a civil nightmare to get her out. "She staged it," I said. "The call, the voice, the casual demand for towels, it was all acting." She was sitting at her desk in her studio, looking at a progress bar uploading a crime, and acting like a sister. "She isn't a sister," Maya said. "She is a co-conspirator, and she just handed us a loaded gun." Maya turned the laptop back around. "I am amending the temporary restraining order application. We are not just naming Maris Carter anymore. We are naming Whitney Carter as a primary defendant in the fraud claim. She used her business email. She used her business internet. That pierces the corporate veil. If we win this, her company is liable too." I sat back in the chair. I felt sick, but it was a clarifying sickness. It stripped away the last lingering doubt, the tiny voice that had whispered, "Maybe they just don't understand boundaries." They understood boundaries perfectly. That was why they brought heavy equipment to break them down. "There is one more thing," Maya said. She sounded almost hesitant, which was out of character for her. "The metadata captures the original file name of the document before it was renamed for the system." "Show me," I said. Maya highlighted a line at the bottom of the log. "Original file source, Ainsley_transfer, _final, .pdf." I stared at the words, final. It was such a stupid, mundane detail. It was the kind of file name you give to a high school essay or a graphic design project. It implied drafts. It implied revisions. It implied that they had sat around a table, my mother and my sister, and workshopped the best way to steal my life. They had passed versions back and forth. Is this clause legal enough? Does this signature look real enough? No. Try again. Okay, this is the final one. They planned this for weeks, I said. While I was closing, while I was packing boxes, they were drafting this. Yes, Maya said, and that proves premeditation. It kills any defense of accidental filing or misunderstanding the paperwork. You don't name a file transfer final by accident. My phone, sitting on the edge of Maya's desk, lit up. It was Whitney. Then it lit up again. A voicemail notification, then a text, then another call. She must have received the electronic notification of the lawsuit filing. The court system was automated. The moment Maya submitted the amended complaint, the email addresses on file, including the one Whitney used to commit the fraud, got a ping. Don't answer it, Maya said sharply. I know, I said. I reached for the phone. The screen was filling up with notifications. Whitney. What the hell is this email? Ainsley. Call me right now. Whitney. You are suing Mom? Are you insane? Whitney. Pick up the phone. You are going to kill her. She has high blood pressure. Do you want to give her a stroke? Whitney. This is my business email. Ainsley, my investors can see this. You are ruining my career over a misunderstanding. Voice memo received. 2 minutes long. I went to press play. But Maya's hand shot out and covered the screen. No, she said. Do not listen to it. Not yet. If you listen to it now, you will hear your baby sister crying, or screaming, or sounding like the victim. You will react emotionally. You will want to defend yourself. You will want to explain. She withdrew her hand. We do not explain. Maya said. We archive. Okay, I said. Forward everything to the investigator. Maya ordered. The texts, the call logs, the voicemail file. Do not reply. Do not type a single character. If you respond, even just to say stop, they can argue you are engaging in a dialogue. We want them to be screaming into a void. It makes them look unstable, and it makes you look afraid. I picked up the phone. I didn't unlock it. I just held it. It felt heavy, like a brick of lead. She says I am ruining her career, I said, because I used her business email. Maya laughed. It was a dry barking sound. She used her business email to commit a felony. She ruined her own career. She just expected you to be too polite to point it out. I spent the next hour in the quiet corner of Maya's office, doing exactly what she said. I didn't listen to the voice memos. I just tapped share, save to files, email to detective. I wrote a summary for the investigator. I forced myself to write like a robot. Exhibit A. Metadata log showing upload from Whitney Motion House domain at 14:12 hours. Exhibit B. Phone log showing incoming call from Whitney Carter at 14:13 hours. Exhibit C. Text message received at 14:15 hours stating, "We are coming in 2 hours." Conclusion. Suspect coordinated digital filing with physical arrival to establish tenancy before fraud was discovered. No adjectives. No, I felt betrayed. No, how could she? Just facts. Timestamps. Sources. When I was done, I hit send. I walked out of Maya's office into the parking lot. The sun was setting, turning the sky a bruised purple. I got into my car and drove back to Driftwood Key. The drive was silent. I didn't play the radio. When I got to the house, the security guard at the gate, a new one, not Dante, nodded at me. "Quiet night, Ms. Carter?" "Yes," I said. Quiet. I parked in the driveway. The tire tracks from Whitney's SUV were still visible in the dirt, hardening into a permanent scar on the landscape. I walked inside. The house was dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the sliding glass doors and looked out at the ocean. The waves were invisible in the dark, just a rhythmic crashing sound, over and over again. I thought I would feel triumphant. We had them. We had the smoking gun. We had the IP address, the email, the file name. The trap they had built for me had snapped shut on their own fingers, but standing there in the dark, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt haunted. I closed my eyes, and I could hear it. Not the ocean, not the wind. I heard the sound of a mouse clicking. I imagined Whitney sitting in her studio, surrounded by her expensive cameras and her awards. I imagined her opening that PDF. I imagined her typing final_final. I imagined her laughing. Maybe, or maybe just rolling her eyes, thinking about how easy it would be to crush me. And then, the click. Submit. That click was the sound of my childhood ending. It was the sound of the last thread of family snapping. She hadn't just clicked a button. She had pulled a trigger. She just didn't realize that the gun was pointed backward. I opened my eyes. The ocean was still there. The house was still mine. "Final," I whispered to the empty room, and for the first time, I really meant it. The notification came through at 10:45 in the morning on a Tuesday. It was not a text message, and it was not a voicemail. It was a push notification from the County Property Monitoring Service, the specific property fraud alert system that I had activated with the clerk. "Patricia, just 48 hours prior. Activity detected. Parcel number 49201, document submission attempted." My heart did not race. It did not pound. Instead, it slowed down to a heavy, deliberate thud. I sat at my kitchen counter, the laptop open in front of me, and logged into the portal. The status was highlighted in bright red, rejected/flag active. Someone had tried to file another document against my deed. Because of the code red administrative lock we had placed, the system had automatically kicked it back to a human reviewer, who had denied it instantly because the submitter was not me. I clicked on the details to see what they had tried to attach to my home this time. It was not a deed transfer, it was a claim of lien for unpaid improvements. Specifically, a mechanic's lien. I read the scanned preview of the rejected document. It claimed that a company called Gulf Coast Roofing and Repair had performed $18,000 worth of emergency roof repairs on my property on January 29th, the day after I closed. It claimed that I, the owner, had refused to pay the invoice, and therefore, the company was asserting a legal claim against the equity of the house. I looked up at my ceiling. It was pristine. I walked outside to the driveway and looked up at the roof. The shingles were brand new, installed by the previous owner 3 months ago as a condition of the sale. No one had touched them. I went back inside and called Maya. "They are shifting tactics," Maya said, her voice sounding tinny through the speakerphone as she reviewed the file I sent her. "They know the deed transfer failed. They know the ownership is locked down. So now, they are trying to poison the well." "It is a fake debt," I said. "It is a leverage play," Maya corrected. "A mechanic's lien clouds the title just as badly as a dispute. If you have a lien on the house, you technically are in default on your mortgage. The bank gets notified. If the debt isn't cleared, the contractor can foreclose. They are trying to create a financial crisis that forces you to come to the table. They want you to panic and say, 'Okay, Mom, let's talk. Just make this stop.' $18,000, I repeated, for a roof that doesn't exist. "Look at the contractor," Maya said. "Is it a real company?" I looked at the header on the rejected invoice. Gulf Coast Roofing and Repair, license number CCC1459. "I will find out," I said. I hung up and went to work. I did not use Google. I used the State Department of Business and Professional Regulation database. I ran the license number. It belonged to a man named Thomas Miller, operating out of a town 40 miles inland. The license was active and in good standing. I dialed the number listed in the state registry. "Miller Roofing," a gruff voice answered. "Mr. Miller?" I asked. "My name is Ainsley Carter. I am the owner of a property in Driftwood Key. I am looking at an invoice and a lien release form that appears to be signed by you, regarding $18,000 of work at 42 Dune Grass Way." There was a pause. I could hear the sound of a truck engine idling in the background. "Driftwood Key?" Miller asked. "Lady, I haven't been out to the coast in 6 months. I stick to the suburbs. I don't do beach houses. Too much salt spray. Voids the warranty on the materials." "So you did not file a lien against my property this morning?" I asked. "Hell no," he said. "Who did you say you were?" "I didn't hire you," I said, "but someone used your company letterhead and your contractor license number to try to put a lien on my house. They forged your signature." The line went silent for a long moment. Then, the tone of his voice changed from annoyed to furious. "They forged my signature?" he growled. "You send me that document. Right now. I protect my license, lady. If someone is out there papering the town with my name on fake work, I will bury them. I am sending it to you now," I said. "If you could confirm in writing that you have never been to my address and did not authorize this filing, it would help us both." "You will have it in an hour," Miller promised. "And then I am calling the sheriff." I hung up. I added a new folder to my desktop. Third-party victims. My mother and sister were not just attacking me anymore. In their desperation to regain control, they were colliding with the real world. They had dragged an innocent roofer into their scheme, assuming he would never find out. They assumed the lien would just sit there, a silent bomb ticking away in the county records. Until I was forced to pay it off or surrender the house, they forgot that when you attack a fortress, you have to cross a minefield, and they were stepping on every single mine. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I had Miller's affidavit in my inbox. It was angry, capitalized, and legally binding. I, Thomas Miller, confirm I have never entered the property at 42 Dune Grass Way. I forwarded it to Maya. Add this to the fraud complaint. I typed, but the assault was not just legal, it was social. I had blocked Whitney on every platform. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, even LinkedIn. But blocking her did not stop the noise. It just meant I couldn't see the frequency. My friend Sarah sent me a screenshot at 4 o'clock. She didn't add any commentary, just a sad face emoji. It was an Instagram story from Whitney's account. It was a black screen with white text. The font small and fragile looking. It is crazy how money changes people. You think you know your own sister? You think you built a life together. And then, the second she gets a little power, she locks you out. Literally. My mom is heartbroken. We are just trying to keep the family legacy alive. And we are being treated like criminals. Justice takes time, but the truth always wins. Family betrayal. Toxic revenge. I stared at the image. It was masterful. She didn't name me. She didn't name the location. She kept it vague enough to avoid a libel suit, but specific enough to rally her flying monkeys. Underneath the text, there was a link. Support the legal fund. She was fundraising. She was asking her 20,000 followers to donate money to help her steal my house. Framed as a battle against a toxic sister. I felt a flash of nausea. I imagined the comments. I imagined the strangers analyzing my life, projecting their own family traumas onto a situation they knew nothing about. You go, girl. Cut her off. That sister sounds like a narcissist. They were calling me a narcissist while I sat in a house with the curtains drawn, checking IP logs. But Whitney had made a tactical error. She had posted a second story. This one was a video. It was older footage, clearly from the day she arrived and was turned away. It showed the front gate of Seagrass Palms. It showed the sign, Private Community, Residents Only. Her voiceover was whispering, conspiratorial. Guys, this is where she is hiding, in this bougie gated community that bans regular people. Look at this place. It reeks of privilege. We are going to get in there eventually. Watch this space. She had tagged the location, Driftwood Key. I forwarded the screenshot to Janelle. The property manager. Subject, security threat/harassment. Janelle, please see the attached social media post from the individual we denied entry to on Saturday. She is broadcasting the location of the community, disparaging the security protocols, and encouraging her followers to watch this space for a return attempt. Janelle's reply came in 12 minutes. It was not an email. It was a PDF attached to an email. Official notice of ban and cease desist, issued by Seagrass Palms Homeowners Association Board of Directors. To Whitney Carter. Dear Ms. Carter, your recent digital conduct, specifically the filming and broadcasting of private community security features and the incitement of unauthorized entry, constitutes a violation of our privacy bylaws and a threat to resident safety. You are hereby permanently banned from the premises of Seagrass Palms. Any attempt to enter, by you or any guest associated with you, will result in immediate arrest for criminal trespass. Local law enforcement has been notified of your vehicle description. Janelle had not just warned her, she had nuked the bridge. I imagined Whitney receiving that letter. She wanted a stage? She just got banned from the theater. But the day was not over. The final blow came by traditional mail. The mail carrier arrived at 5 o'clock. I watched him from the window as he placed a single, thick envelope in my mailbox. I walked out to get it. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored, high-quality linen paper. The return address was a label, printed in an elegant serif font. The Carter Legacy Trust, P.O. Box 492, Willow Creek. It looked official. It looked dignified. It looked like my mother. I took it inside and opened it with a letter opener. I didn't rip it. I treated it like hazardous material. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Dearest Ainsley, we are so confused and hurt by your behavior. Why are you involving police? Why are you hiring lawyers? This is a family matter. We are not enemies. We are your people. Your father and I are worried about your mental state. You seem paranoid, buying a house in secret, locking out your sister, making wild accusations about fraud. This isn't you. This is the stress talking. We have set up a mediation appointment with Pastor Daniels in Willow Creek for next Thursday. We want to sit down, just the four of us, and work this out. We can restructure the trust so you feel secure. We can put the house in a shared LLC so everyone is protected. You don't need to carry this burden alone. Please, honey, drop the lawsuits. Call off the dogs. Come home so we can fix this. We love you. Mom. I read the letter twice. The first time, I felt the old tug, the hook in my gut that said, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am overreacting. They just want to help. The second time, I read it with my risk analyst eyes, worried about your mental state. That was setting a narrative for a competency hearing. Restructure the trust. That was an admission that they wanted the asset. Shared LLC. That was a trap to dilute my ownership. Drop the lawsuits. That was the goal. They didn't want peace. They wanted me to disarm. They were asking me to walk out of the fortress and into the open field where they had the numbers advantage. No, I said aloud. The word felt solid, like a stone in my hand. I took a photo of the letter. I sent it to Maya. Response needed, I typed. Maya called me 10 minutes later. I read the love letter, she said. Her voice was dry as dust. Classic gaslighting. They are trying to create a paper trail showing they attempted reasonable resolution while you were hostile and paranoid. If this goes to court, they will wave this letter and say, look, we tried to hug her, and she sued us. How do we respond? I asked. We don't send a hug back, Maya said. We send a shield. Dictate it, I said. I am drafting it now, Maya said. It will be short. It will cite the temporary restraining order case number. It will cite the police report number for the forgery, and it will say this. My client, Ainsley Carter, declines your invitation to mediate. Given the active criminal investigation regarding the fraudulent instruments filed by your party against her property, any meeting would be inappropriate. All future communication must be directed to my office. Do not contact Ms. Carter directly again. Doing so will be considered a violation of the pending protective order. Perfect, I said. And Ainsley? Maya added. The mental state comment? That is a warning shot. They are going to try to paint you as unstable. Make sure your life is boring. Make sure your house is clean. Make sure you are the most rational, predictable person in the state of Florida. I am a risk analyst, I said. Boring is my superpower. I hung up. I walked to the kitchen and placed my mother's letter in the binder. Right next to the roofer's affidavit and the screenshot of Whitney's Instagram, I looked at the collection of papers. For years, I had thought the problem was me. I thought if I was just nicer, if I was just more generous, if I just gave a little more, they would finally be satisfied. I thought the conflict was a failure of my love. But looking at the fake invoice, the fake deed, and the manipulative letter, I realized the truth. This wasn't a relationship. It was a resource extraction operation. I was not a daughter or a sister to them. I was a natural resource, and I had finally put up a fence. They weren't banging on the door because they missed me. They were banging on the door because they were hungry. I went to the sliding glass door and locked it. Then I engaged the secondary security bar. Let them starve. The digital siege had failed, so they switched to the oldest weapon in the Carter family arsenal, the dinner table. My phone lit up at 6 p.m. It was a text from my mother. Maris, come home. Ainsley, I made your favorite pot roast. We just want to talk like adults. No lawyers, just family. 10 minutes later, my father, Dean, called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was short, his voice heavy with that specific blend of disappointment and authority that used to make me crumble. You are blowing this out of proportion. Ainsley, you are making a scene. Call us back. We need to settle this before you do something you cannot undo. I sat in the darkening living room, listening to the ocean churn outside. Something I cannot undo. He was talking about the lawsuit, but he sounded like he was talking to a teenager who had dyed her hair pink. They were trying to reset the dynamic. They wanted to drag me back to the dining room table in Willow Creek, where the lighting was warm, the food was heavy, and the gaslighting was served as the main course. I did not go to Willow Creek. I did not eat the pot roast. Instead, I called Maya. They want a meeting, I said. Do not go. Maya replied instantly. It is an ambush. They want to get you in a room without witnesses, work on your guilt, and get you to sign something just to make peace. If you sign anything, even a napkin, they can use it to argue that the previous fraud was just a misunderstanding that you retroactively approved. I know, I said, but I need them to say it. I need them to admit why they did it. The judge needs to hear that this wasn't a mistake. Then we do a call, Maya said, but we do it on our terms, in Florida. You need consent to record a call if the other party has an expectation of privacy. So you are going to tell them, you are going to say, I am recording this call for my records. If they stay on the line, they have consented. They will hang up, I said. No, they won't, Maya said, her voice grim. Because they think they are smarter than you. They think they can talk you out of the recording just like they talked you out of your self-esteem for 30 years. I set up the conference line. I put my phone on the kitchen counter. Next to the stack of evidence, I hit record. The red light on the screen blinked. A steady, unblinking eye. I dialed my mother's number. She picked up on the first ring. Ainsley? Her voice was breathless, hopeful. Honey, are you coming? We held dinner. I am not coming, Mom, I said. My voice was steady. I was not the daughter. I was the risk analyst. I am calling to hear what you have to say. But before we start, you need to know that I am recording this call. My lawyer has a copy of the stream. If you do not want to be recorded, you can hang up now. There was a silence on the other end, a long, heavy pause. I could hear the background noise of their house, the hum of the refrigerator, the clinking of silverware. That is very aggressive. Ainsley, my father's voice boomed. He must have been on speakerphone. Recording your parents? Is this who you have become? I am recording, I repeated. Do you want to proceed, or should I hang up? Don't hang up, my mother said quickly. Dean, stop it. She is just scared. It is okay. Ainsley, record if it makes you feel safe. We have nothing to hide. Good, I said. Why did you file a forged deed against my house? I didn't warm up. I didn't ask about their health. I went straight to the wound. Oh, Ainsley, stop using words like forged. My mother sighed. It was a sigh of infinite patience, the sound of a martyr being persecuted. It wasn't a forgery. It was a correction. We were just trying to fix the paperwork. Fix it how? I asked. You bought that house as a single woman, my mother said. It is a huge asset. It is dangerous for you to hold that much equity in your own name. What if you get sued? What if you marry some man who takes half? We were just moving it into the trust to protect you. So you signed my name, I said. We signed on your behalf, my father corrected. We have always handled the finances. Ainsley, you know you are not good with details. You get overwhelmed. We were doing the heavy lifting for you. I am 32 years old, I said. I handle risk assessment for Fortune 500 companies. I think I can handle a mortgage. This is exactly what I mean, my father said, his voice rising. You are arrogant. You think because you have a job, you understand how the world works. That house is a family asset. It belongs to the legacy. You are just the custodian. I paid the down payment, I said. I pay the mortgage. My name is on the title. And that can be fixed, my mother interjected, her voice shrill. Ainsley, listen to me. Just drop this silly lawsuit. Come home. We can sit down, and you can just sign the deed again, the right way this time. We will notarize it properly. And then it is all legal. No harm done. We just need you to sign for the proper procedure. I looked at the phone. There it was. Just sign the deed again. She had just admitted that the first signature was not mine. She had admitted that the procedure was flawed and that they needed a new signature to legitimize the theft. I am not signing anything, I said. The house is mine. The trust has zero interest in it. You don't understand, my father said. His voice dropped lower, becoming colder. We are not taking it from you. We are just holding it. We are holding it in the trust, in case you change your mind, in case you have one of your episodes and decide to sell it to a stranger. We are keeping it safe until you are ready. My blood ran cold. In case you have one of your episodes. I didn't have episodes. I had anxiety. Anxiety caused by them. But they had weaponized my legitimate emotions, painting me as unstable, as someone who couldn't be trusted with her own life. They weren't stealing the house because they needed the money. They were stealing it because they couldn't stand the idea of me being independent. I am perfectly ready, I said. Ainsley, wait. It was a new voice. Whitney. She had been listening in the background the whole time. Ainsley, seriously, you are being such a buzzkill, Whitney said. Her tone was completely different from our parents. She didn't sound angry. She sounded calculating. Look, forget the legal stuff for a second. Think about the opportunity here. What opportunity? I asked. I have been thinking about it, Whitney said. This whole drama? It is actually great content. We can spin it. We can do a series. Family Healing by the Sea. We film us working through this argument at the beach house. We show the raw emotion, the therapy, and then the reconciliation. I have a sponsor lined up who does mental health apps. They would pay 6 figures for a series like that. I stared at the speakerphone in disbelief. She wanted to monetize the restraining order. She wanted to turn her felony into a sponsored series. She wanted to invite a camera crew into the house I had bought to escape her, so she could film herself forgiving me for refusing to be robbed. You want to film a show about how you tried to steal my house? I asked. Not steal, Whitney corrected breezily. About how we learned to share. Come on, Ainsley, you get the house, I get the content. Mom and Dad get the trust. Everyone wins. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. The mantra of my childhood. The phrase that had been used to strip mine my boundaries since I was 5 years old. I felt a sudden, profound calm. The last tether had snapped. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. No, I said. What? Whitney asked. The house is mine, I said. I am not signing it over. I am not filming a series, and I'm not coming to dinner. The next time you hear from me, it will be through a process server. Ainsley, you listen to me, my father started to roar. Mute, I said to the empty room. I pressed the red end call button. The silence that rushed back into the kitchen was exquisite. I saved the recording. I named it confession_dinner_call. I sent it to Maya. 5 minutes later, Maya texted back. I listened to the first 3 minutes. Just sign it the right way. We are holding it in case you have an episode. We signed on your behalf. Ainsley, this is gold. This destroys their defense that it was a clerical error or a misunderstanding. They just admitted to willful, paternalistic fraud on tape. We are going to bury them, but the family wasn't done. If the soft trap of dinner didn't work, the hard trap of social pressure was next. My phone started buzzing with texts from Whitney. You are making a huge mistake. You think you are so tough? You are going to lose everyone. I am going to tell everyone what you are really like. You are going to be alone in that big empty house, and you are going to rot there. Mom is crying. I hope you are happy. I didn't block her this time. I needed the evidence. I let the messages roll in, screenshotting each one, archiving them into the folder marked harassment. I am not alone, I said to the screen. And then, a message came through that I wasn't expecting. It was an Instagram direct message request. It was from a user named Chloe_vibes. I recognized the profile picture. It was the girl with the pink hair, the one who had dragged the suitcase up my driveway, the one who had looked horrified when the police arrived. I hesitated, then accepted the request. Hi, Ainsley. The message read, I know we don't know each other, and this is super awkward, but I felt like I had to say something. I watched the 3 dots dance as she typed. I am really sorry about the other day. We had no idea you didn't know we were coming. Whitney told us. Well, she told us a lot of things. I typed back. What did she tell you? The answer came immediately. She told us she bought the house. She said she closed on it last month with her YouTube money. She showed us pictures of the keys. She said you were just staying there temporarily to help her set up the furniture. But that you were moving out that morning. That is why we were so confused when you opened the door. We thought you were the one crashing at her place. I stared at the phone. Whitney hadn't just lied to me. She hadn't just lied to the police. She had sold a complete fabrication to her entire social circle. She had claimed ownership before she even stole the deed. She told us the house was legally hers. Chloe continued. That is why we agreed to come. If we knew it was your place and you didn't want us there, we never would have driven down. She played us too. I just thought you should know. I took a screenshot. This was the final nail. It proved that the transfer final PDF wasn't a protective measure by concerned parents. It was part of a long con by a narcissist who needed a backdrop for her lifestyle and decided simply to take mine. Whitney had told her friends the house was hers because she truly believed that if she wanted something enough, it became hers. She believed reality was editable. She was about to find out that a court order is the one thing you cannot edit in post-production. I replied to Chloe, "Thank you. This helps more than you know." I put the phone down. I walked to the sliding glass door and looked out at the night. The reflection in the glass showed a woman standing alone in a dark kitchen. But I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a vault. "Try to edit this," I whispered. I turned off the lights and went to sleep. For the first time in a week, I didn't dream about them. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. It did not have the mahogany grandeur of a television set, nor the dramatic lighting that my sister would have chosen for her close-up. It was a windowless box with fluorescent lights that hummed at a frequency only dogs and anxious defendants could hear. The air smelled of floor wax and stale anxiety. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Maya. I was wearing a charcoal gray suit, buttoned to the throat. My hair was pulled back. I looked boring. I looked reliable. I looked like a risk analyst who had run the numbers and found a discrepancy. Across the aisle, the Carter family was putting on a performance worthy of an Academy Award. My mother, Maris, was wearing a pastel cardigan that I had never seen before, something soft and matriarchal, designed to make her look harmless. She was clutching a tissue, dabbing at eyes that were perfectly dry. My father, Dean, sat with his arm around her, wearing his Sunday suit, projecting the image of the weary, responsible patriarch dealing with a hysterical daughter. And then there was Whitney. She was dressed in what she probably imagined was courtroom chic, a black dress that was slightly too short, large designer glasses that were meant to look intellectual but looked like a costume, and a posture of aggrieved victimhood. She kept glancing at the gallery, perhaps looking for a camera, but phones were strictly prohibited. This was the one room in Florida where she could not control the angle. The judge, the Honorable Evelyn Vance, did not look like she enjoyed theater. She looked like a woman who had spent 20 years listening to people lie about money and custody, and she had zero patience left in her reserves. "We are here on the matter of Carter versus Carter et al., Judge Vance said, shuffling the file. "Motion for preliminary injunction and associated fraud claims. Mr. Sterling, you may proceed for the defense." Their lawyer, a slick man with a tan that was 3 shades too orange, stood up. He buttoned his jacket and gave the judge a smile that was supposed to be charming. "Your Honor," he began, his voice dripping with faux sympathy, "this entire case is a tragic misunderstanding. We have here a family dispute that has spiraled out of control because the plaintiff, Ainsley Carter, is currently emotionally overwhelmed." I stared straight ahead. Emotionally overwhelmed. It was the code word for crazy. The defendants, her loving parents and sister, have only ever acted to protect the family assets. Sterling continued. They did not steal anything. They were under the impression that they had Ms. Carter's consent to secure the property into the family trust. In fact, we have evidence of oral consent. He paused for dramatic effect. On the day in question, Ms. Whitney Carter called the plaintiff. She stated her intent to arrive with guests. And what did the plaintiff say? She said, and I quote, "Sure, that is an affirmative. Your Honor, that is permission. Ainsley Carter invited them in, and then, in a fit of erratic behavior, called the police on her own guests. This isn't fraud. It's a family trying to manage a volatile member. Judge Vance looked at Maya. Counsel? Maya stood up. She didn't smile. She didn't use flowery language. She picked up a stack of paper that was 3 inches thick. Your Honor, Maya said, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. The defense argues that the word sure, spoken once during a 30-second phone call, constitutes a binding legal contract to transfer $1 million asset and allow a commercial film crew to occupy a private residence. We argue that context matters. Maya walked to the podium. The plaintiff said sure, not to grant permission, but to de-escalate a hostile situation while she contacted private security. And we do not need to rely on, he said, she said. We have data. Maya handed a folder to the bailiff. Exhibit A, Maya said. Security logs from Seagrass Palms Community Association. At 1400 hours and 20 minutes, 10 minutes after the phone call in question, Ms. Carter filed a formal no trespass directive with security. She then emailed the property manager explicitly denying entry. These are not the actions of someone who has granted consent. These are the actions of a homeowner fortifying her property against an invasion. Judge Vance flipped through the pages. Her face remained impassive. Furthermore, Maya continued, the defense claims the family was acting to secure the asset. We would like to direct the court's attention to Exhibit C, the metadata logs from the county recorder's office. This was the moment. I saw Whitney shift in her seat. She crossed her legs, then uncrossed them. She knew what was coming. On January 30th, at 1400 hours and 12 minutes, a fraudulent deed of trust was uploaded to the county portal, Maya stated. This document attempted to transfer 50% of my client's home to the Carter Legacy Trust. The signature on this document is a digital copy-paste, not an original wet signature. Mr. Sterling jumped up. Objection. There is no proof of who uploaded that file. It could have been anyone. My clients are elderly. They don't understand computers. Maya didn't even look at him. She looked at the judge. The account used to upload the forgery was registered to the email address operations@whitneymotionhouse.com, Maya said, enunciating every syllable. The IP address used for the upload traces directly to a commercial studio in the Arts District, specifically, the business headquarters of Miss Whitney Carter. Judge Vance stopped flipping pages. She looked up. She took off her reading glasses and looked directly at Whitney. Ms. Carter, the judge said. Whitney jumped slightly. Yes, me? Is Whitney Motion House your business entity? Whitney stood up. She smoothed her dress, flashing a nervous smile. Yes, Your Honor, it is a creative agency. I am a content creator. I have a very large following. I didn't ask about your following, Judge Vance interrupted. Her voice flat. I asked if you own the domain. Well, yes, Whitney stammered. But I have a team. I have interns. People use my computers all the time. I can't possibly track every file that gets uploaded. It was probably just a clerical error by an assistant who was trying to help Mom. A clerical error, the judge repeated. She sounded skeptical. Yes. Whitney gained confidence. We deal with a lot of contracts. Maybe someone grabbed the wrong file. I didn't do it personally. Maya stepped forward again. Your Honor, regarding the clerical error defense, please look at the metadata for the file name itself. The judge looked down at the document. The file uploaded was named Ainsley_transfer_final_final.pdf. Maya read into the record. This implies multiple drafts. This implies a revision process. This is not a file you accidentally click on. This is a file you create, save, rename, and submit with intent. I watched my mother. She had stopped dabbing her eyes. She was staring at the table, her face pale. She realized, perhaps for the first time, that her kitchen table manipulation tactics did not work in a court of law. And finally, Maya said, delivering the killing blow. If this was merely an attempt to secure the asset for the family, why was a change of address form filed with the tax collector's office at the exact same time? The courtroom went silent. Even Mr. Sterling looked surprised. He evidently hadn't been told about that part. The tax bills for my client's home were diverted to a P.O. box in Willow Creek controlled by the defendants. Maya said, "This is not protection. Your Honor, this is an attempt to hide the theft. If my client hadn't caught it, she would have missed her tax notices, potentially leading to a tax deed sale, which the trust would likely have stepped in to rescue her from. This is a calculated scheme to divest a woman of her property." Judge Vance closed the folder. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. She looked at my parents. Then she looked at Whitney. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said, "do your clients have any evidence, any at all, that Ainsley Carter signed that deed? A witness? A notary log? A video?" We believe she signed it previously, Your Honor, and perhaps forgot," Sterling flailed. "She forgot she signed a deed giving away half her house?" The judge raised an eyebrow. "And the digital signature just happened to be uploaded from her sister's computer 3 hours before the sister showed up with a film crew?" "It is a complex family dynamic," Sterling tried. "It looks like simple fraud to me," Judge Vance said. She picked up her gavel, but didn't use it yet. She leaned forward, clasping her hands. "This court is not a reality show, Ms. Carter," she said to Whitney, "and it is not a therapy session for parents who cannot accept that their adult child has boundaries." Whitney opened her mouth to object, but the judge cut her off with a look that could freeze water. "I am granting the preliminary injunction in full," Judge Vance ruled. "Effective immediately, Maris Carter, Dean Carter, and Whitney Carter are enjoined from entering the property at 42 Dune Grass Way. They are enjoined from contacting the plaintiff by phone, text, email, social media, or third party. They are enjoined from filing any document whatsoever with the county clerk regarding this parcel." "Your Honor, the no-contact order is extreme," Sterling protested. "They are a family." "They are adverse parties in a fraud case," the judge snapped. "And frankly, given the evidence of the tax bill diversion, I am referring this file to the state attorney's office for investigation into forgery, uttering a forged instrument, and identity theft." My mother gasped. It was a real sound this time. "Criminal?" she whispered. "Dean," she said, "criminal." "We will handle it, Maris," my father hissed. But he looked gray. "The clerk will strike the fraudulent deed from the record immediately." Judge Vance continued. "Ms. Carter, your title is cleared. Mr. Sterling, explain to your clients that if they violate this order, they will go to jail, not for a scene, not for a vlog, for contempt of court. We are adjourned." The gavel came down. Bang. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. Better than the ocean. Better than music. It was the sound of a heavy iron door slamming shut between me and them. Maya turned to me and allowed herself a very small, very professional smile. "That went well?" "She referred it to the state attorney," I said, stunned. "The tax address was the kicker," Maya said. "Judges hate it when you mess with the tax collector. It offends their sense of order." We packed up our bags. I didn't look at my family. I could hear them arguing in hushed, frantic tones behind me. Whitney was hissing at the lawyer. My mother was crying for real now, asking if she was going to prison. My father was trying to blame the misunderstanding on the lawyer. I walked out of the courtroom, down the marble hallway, and out into the blinding Florida afternoon. The heat hit me, but it felt good. I felt lighter. I felt like I had just shed a skin I'd been wearing for 30 years. We stood on the courthouse steps. Maya was checking her phone for her next appointment. "You did good, Ainsley," she said. "You didn't flinch." "I practiced," I said. Whitney came bursting out of the courthouse doors a moment later, followed by our parents. She saw me. Her instinct was to lunge, to scream, to make a scene, but then she saw the bailiff standing by the door. She saw Maya. She remembered the word jail. She stopped. She glared at me with pure, unadulterated venom. She pulled out her phone, probably to record a story about the injustice of the legal system, but as she unlocked her screen, her phone rang. It wasn't a text, it was a call. She looked at the caller ID, and her angry expression instantly morphed into her professional influencer face. "Oh, it is the brand rep from Lumina," she whispered to her friends/parents. "This is the big contract, the six-figure one." She answered the phone, putting on her brightest voice. "Hi, Jessica. So good to hear from you. I am just wrapping up a little project." I stood there, just 10 feet away, and watched. Whitney's smile froze. Her eyes went wide. "What?" she said. Her voice was shrill. "What do you mean, morality clause?" I looked at Maya. Maya looked at me. But that is a private matter," Whitney argued, pacing in a tight circle. "That is just a family misunderstanding. Who told you about the investigation?" She stopped pacing. She listened. Her face went slack. "No, Jessica. Please, we have already shot the content. I have the product placement ready to go. You can't just pull the contract." She listened for another 5 seconds. "Jessica? Jessica!" Whitney pulled the phone away from her ear. She stared at it. The call had ended. She looked up, and for the first time, she saw me, not as a prop, not as a stepping stone, but as the person who had just dismantled her life. "They dropped me," she whispered. She sounded like a child. "Lumina dropped me. They said their compliance department got a flag about a pending fraud investigation involving my business entity." She looked at her parents. "They canceled the contract. That was $80,000. That was my rent for the next year." My father looked at me, his eyes hard. "Are you happy now, Ainsley? You cost your sister her livelihood." I looked at them. I looked at the people who had tried to steal my home, divert my mail, and gaslight me into believing I was insane. "I didn't call Lumina," I said calmly. "I didn't have to. You put your business name on a forged federal document. You registered your fraud in the public record." I stepped closer to Whitney. "You wanted content," I said. "You wanted a story about a woman taking control of her life. Well, you got one. It just wasn't the one you wanted to tell." I turned to Maya. "I am ready to go home." "Let's go," Maya said. We walked toward the parking lot. Behind me, I heard Whitney start to sob. Not the fake, pretty crying she did for the camera, but the ugly, gasping panic of someone who realizes that the world has consequences. I got into my car. I put the key in the ignition. I drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing back there I needed. 3 weeks after the hearing, the mail carrier delivered a thick white envelope from the clerk of the circuit court. I did not open it immediately. I placed it on the kitchen island, right in the center of the granite slab where, a month ago, I had laid out the highlighted rules of the Homeowners Association. I made a cup of coffee. I watched the steam rise in the morning light. Only then did I reach for the letter opener. Inside was a document titled Order Granting Summary Judgment and Quieting Title. It was 18 pages of dense legal prose. To the average reader, it would have been boring. It was filled with citations, statute numbers, and procedural history. But to me, it was poetry. I read every single word. I read the paragraph where the judge declared the deed of trust filed by Maris Carter to be void ab initio, invalid from the beginning. I read the section where the court ordered the county clerk to strike the fraudulent instrument from the public record immediately. I read the line where the judge permanently enjoined the defendants from asserting any claim, right, or interest in the property at 42 Dune Grass Way. And finally, I read the order lifting the lis pendens. The red flag was gone. The warning sign that had hung over my home, signaling to the world that it was a battlefield, had been taken down. The title was clean. The chain of ownership had been scrubbed of the rust my family tried to inflict upon it. I held the paper in my hand. It was just standard copy paper, slightly warm from the sun hitting the counter. It weighed less than an ounce, but as I held it, I felt a physical sensation of weight lifting off my shoulders, a pressure I hadn't realized I was carrying since I was 5 years old. This was what freedom looked like. It didn't look like a party. It didn't look like a vacation. It looked like a certified court order with a gold embossed seal in the bottom corner. My phone remained silent. There were no texts from my mother begging for forgiveness. There were no angry voicemails from my father demanding I fix this. The silence was not out of respect. It was out of fear. Maya had forwarded me the correspondence from their attorney. My parents were no longer concerned with family unity or protecting the legacy. They were concerned with staying out of prison. The state attorney's office had opened a formal investigation into the forgery and the diversion of tax documents. Because the document had been uploaded across county lines, from Whitney's studio in the city to the recorder's office in the county seat, there were jurisdictional questions that made the legal bill climb higher every hour. My father, the man who had always prided himself on his financial acumen, was now hemorrhaging money. He was paying a criminal defense retainer for himself, another one for my mother, and a third one for Whitney, because their interests were now conflicted. They could no longer present a united front. If my mother claimed she didn't know how to use the computer, she threw Whitney under the bus. If Whitney claimed she was just following orders, she threw my mother under the bus. The trust they loved so much was being drained to pay for the crime of trying to fill it. They were not hiding behind the word family anymore because the prosecutor didn't care about their Sunday dinners. The prosecutor cared about the digital signature that proved they had tried to defraud the government. Whitney, true to her nature, had tried to spin the narrative one last time. 4 days after the court hearing, a video appeared on her secondary channel. She sat on the floor of her apartment, not the studio, which she was reportedly vacating to save money, wearing a gray hoodie, looking bereft of makeup. The title was simply, "My Side of the Story." She cried. She talked about how she had been misunderstood. She talked about how she tried to save her sister from a lonely life. She never admitted to the forgery. She called it a miscommunication of paperwork. "I just wanted us to be together," she wept into the camera. "I wanted to create a sanctuary for us. And now, I am being painted as a villain by a legal system that doesn't understand love." It might have worked 3 years ago, but the internet is a ruthless place, and receipts live forever. In the comments section, someone, I suspected it was Chloe, the pink-haired girl, had posted a timestamp analysis. "You said you were trying to help her, but the court records show you uploaded the transfer file at 2:12 in the afternoon and then called her at 2:13 acting like you were just visiting. You didn't want to visit. You wanted to squat." Another comment posted a link to the public court docket, which was available to anyone who knew how to search. "This isn't a misunderstanding. The judge said you diverted her tax bills. That is not love. That is theft." The ratio of dislikes to likes was catastrophic. Whitney deleted the video 6 hours later. But it was too late. The sponsorship with the wellness app was gone. The fashion brand deals were gone. She had built a brand on authenticity, and she had been exposed as a fraud in high definition. Even the physical gates of my world had slammed shut. Janelle, the property manager at Seagrass Palms, sent me a final email. It was short and professional. "Dear Ms. Carter, please be advised that the security system has been updated. The license plates associated with Whitney Carter, Dean Carter, and Maris Carter have been permanently blacklisted. If these vehicles approach the guest lane or the service entrance, the system will trigger an automatic alert to the Driftwood Key Police Department for criminal trespass. You do not need to call us. We will handle the intercept." I didn't need to watch the monitors anymore. The system was autonomous, but I had one more layer of protection to build. I hired a new estate planning attorney, someone Maya recommended, someone who had never met my parents. I created a new trust. It was not named the Carter Legacy Trust. It was named the Dune Grass Revocable Trust. I transferred the title of the house into this new entity. I appointed a professional corporate trustee to manage it in the event of my incapacitation. I wrote a specific clause into the trust documents. Under no circumstances, including death or disability. Shall any asset within this trust be transferred to, managed by, or benefit Maris, Dean, or Whitney Carter? If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, the house would be sold, and the proceeds would go to a charity that supports victims of financial abuse. My family would not get a single shingle. I locked the tax address to a secure box at a UPS store 3 towns over. I set up a permanent credit freeze. I subscribe to a service that scans public records every 24 hours for my name. I sat at my computer and watched the final confirmations roll in. Credit freeze, active. Title monitor, active. Trust funding, complete. I closed the laptop. I walked to the front door. I opened it and stepped out onto the porch. The sun was high and bright. The air smelled of salt and jasmine. The street was quiet. There were no SUVs parked on the grass. There were no cameras. There was no screaming. I looked toward the guard gate in the distance. I couldn't see it from here, but I knew what was happening. According to the log Janelle had shared with me, Whitney had tried to come back one last time yesterday. She hadn't tried to drive in. She had parked her car a block away and tried to walk through the pedestrian gate. She punched in the code she had likely memorized from looking over my shoulder years ago, or perhaps a generic code she guessed. It didn't work. She had stood there, pressing buttons, until Dante walked out of the guardhouse. I hadn't been there, but Dante told me about it. She asked if she could just leave a note. Dante had said, she had a letter. She looked small. She wasn't wearing the sunglasses. Did you take the letter? I had asked him. No, ma'am, Dante said. I told her that accepting the letter would be a violation of the court order. I told her she had to leave the premises immediately or I would have to call the deputies. What did she do? She stood there for a minute, Dante said. She looked at the street, she looked at the houses, and then she just turned around and walked back to her car. I imagined that moment. Whitney, standing on the hot pavement, holding a letter that was probably full of more manipulation, more "I'm sorry, but," more "we are family." She was standing on the outside of the paradise she felt entitled to. For the first time in her life, a door had remained closed. No amount of crying, no amount of charm, no amount of content could open it. The code had changed. I turned around and walked back inside my house. I closed the heavy front door. I threw the deadbolt. Click. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. For 30 years, silence had been a punishment. Silence was what happened when I was being frozen out. Silence was what I endured so I wouldn't be yelled at. Silence was the sound of me making myself small so I wouldn't take up space. But this silence? This was different. This silence was heavy. It was rich. It was mine. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of peace. I pushed off the door and walked through the hallway. Past the empty guest room that would never host ungrateful guests. Past the den that would never be a dressing room. I walked into the open living room, where the sunlight was pouring across the wide plank oak floors. I opened the sliding glass doors and the sound of the ocean rushed in to meet me. The waves were crashing, rhythmic and eternal. I walked out onto the deck. I sat down in the Adirondack chair I had bought for myself, the only piece of furniture on the porch. I had a mug of coffee in my hand. I took a sip. It was hot, strong, and bitter. I looked out at the horizon, where the blue of the sky met the gray of the water. I had bought this house to run away. That was the truth. I had bought it to hide from the phone calls, to hide from the demands, to hide from the role I had been forced to play since birth. I thought if I went far enough, if I built walls thick enough, they couldn't find me. But I was wrong. You cannot hide from a dynamic that lives inside your own head. You have to dismantle it. You have to drag it into a courtroom, expose it to the light, and get a judge to sign a paper that says this is not yours. I didn't buy this house to hide. I bought it to live. I watched a pelican dive into the water, a sudden splash that disappeared as quickly as it happened. My phone was inside, on the counter. It might ring, it might not. It didn't matter. The locks were changed. The deed was recorded. The trust was funded. I took another sip of coffee and let the sun warm my face. I was Ainsley Carter. I was the owner of 42 Dunegrass Way, and for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, behind a boundary that I had built, watching the world from a distance, safe, whole, and finally free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to hear your thoughts. So please leave a comment below telling me where you are tuning in from and what you think about Ainsley's journey. Don't forget to subscribe to the Nina Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people.